Benjamin can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A View from the Top Floor. Today's episode, I stopped by Jeremy's Firehouse just to catch up. We do that from time to time. Sometimes we hit record, a lot of times we don't. This time we happened to hit record, and we talked about standards, not only on the career side of things, but as the volunteer fire service as well, and how standards are being lowered. We talked about tradition, honor, and legacy. All the things that romanticize the fire service, all the things that made us fall in love with today's fire service. So I think there's some good information, some good bullet points in this episode. I hope you enjoy it.
I was chatting with our friend Anthony Rowett on the podcast with him the other day. We talked about over this job, the longevity of the job, we're losing the experienced-based firefighters. We got a lot of guys that are leaving, taking years and years of experience with them. And what's happening is if we don't keep them connected to the company or to the department, depending on where you are, the background work that they've put in all those years, we start to lose the understanding of that legacy. If we don't know who the players were from years ago, the mission of the company could potentially skew or vary because we build upon those that came before us, right? And it's based on their blood, sweat, and tears of where the company is. But when they all disappear and now we have younger guys more than ever, we have to be sure that we protect the integrity of the company. So we need to include the stories and the people that came before us, right? Because companies cycle, right? Like we have like really good companies that have always maintained a really high delivery of service. And then we have other companies that just flounder, right? How do you maintain the integrity of the job within your company built upon the blood, sweat, and tears of those that came before you and keeping that high level of service and professionalism and proficiency?
I think respect is something that you can't demand. But I do feel that across the board, from the smallest volunteer fire department to the biggest city, there's a lack of respect for legacy. Legacy is everything, which comes from tradition. And as we know, tradition is the backbone of the fire service. We're losing our traditions because we don't have that respect for the elders like we once had. You and I came in a long time ago, volunteer fire department. There was a respect for the elders, even though you may not have agreed with what they were doing, because tactics were always changing back then. Like from the Johnny Bean hose to like pre-connect, an 1 3/4 from 1.5 inches, from the rubber hose to 2 inch, and guys are always going to push back. But I think there's a fine line that you have to walk as a young fireman coming in to honor what those guys did before you. That's tough to do, though, and I think that it comes from parenting. I think that parents of the generation of the young 20s coming in, nothing against a generation per se, but the phone, the iPad, take it. You know, you're out to dinner. How often do you see people with the iPads and the kids not interacting, not coloring, not playing tic-tac-toe, all these things we do when we go out to dinner? That leads up to where we are today with legacy, tradition, and the ability to communicate.
Right.
We can't communicate.
What's up, bro? Good, how are you? Good.
How you doing?
Good, no worries. Thanks, bro. Yeah.
But the ability to communicate has been lost, and I think that comes from the parenting of a certain generation where now that's truly in the backbone, filling in from the paid to volunteer. It's a problem. How do you combat that? Well, I think maybe it's having the senior guys not to be scared to step up and say, hey, man, respect these guys. That middle management's very important. Respect the guys. They're not on the rig. They're not crawling down the hallways anymore, but they are certainly the guys that built that reputation for that fire department. And you have to honor that.
There's a ton to that, right? I mean, I look at, my biggest fear is out of sight, out of mind, right? Is if the older guys start disappearing from our companies. In the career department, they're going to retire, and a lot of times when they retire, that's the last time they step foot in that firehouse, right? Yeah. But Anthony and I, the reason why I bring this up, Anthony was talking about one of his favorite events is like the fish fry they do for the retired guys. And what's cool about that, and you've been in Anthony's firehouse, right? And what's cool about that is their firehouse is literally almost a museum to the Mobile Fire Department.
It's beautiful.
But taking a couple steps further, they actually have foundational elements of the guys that created Engine 3 and that high love for the job, that high level of integrity and character that they brought to the game is there for every new kid to see as they walk down that hallway, right? So it's a constant reminder. I'm thinking about firehouses today. You and I were just having a conversation before about, you know, how it used to be versus the way it is today. And like we had guys that were very protective of the way the place always was. We can't lose track of that, but we're having turnover now. We're having younger people coming in or people that they're not second or third generation, so they don't have that generational connection to the firehouse. All of a sudden, we could potentially lose our way. We got to be very protective of the foundation from which we came. That's my biggest concern is like, how do we protect the integrity of the company? If the company operates at this high level, the only way we continue to do that is if we build upon the sacrifices of those that came before us. We have to recognize that, right?
I think you have to recognize the standard. And every firehouse has a different standard. Every fire department has a different standard. But you have to be able to come to that standard. You know, I just did last week with Steve, and he said the standard. At 18 engine, there's a standard. If you're not up to it, we're going to bring you to it. But if you're not willing to get there, well, you have to find a new place to work. And that's so much real in that. And we don't have the guys like Steve anymore. We don't have those senior guys that are pressuring these kids to step into that role, to understand the legacy. I love the idea of this, and this is how we can preserve maybe what you're speaking of, is the fish fry for Anthony, right? For us, at my job, we do an alumni dinner, right? And I was honored enough to go for the first time this past spring. It changed my way of looking at things completely, is that we kind of all just filtered in and we all just sat down wherever. But I did notice all the young guys sat at the table and they're talking firehouse, breaking balls the way it is. I would love to do assigned seats and have all these legends that set the standard sit with the probies, right? And then you have the guys that kind of retire to kind of get out, sit with the middle management, and they can kind of guide them and say, all right, guys, I'm off the job now 3 years. This is your role now. You have to step into that senior man role. People are scared to communicate because they don't know how. And again, that falls back to that generation of here's the phone, here's the iPad, don't pay attention, we're going to have a nice dinner, me and you. Kids are just doing their own thing. Interact with the kids and their children, because very quickly they're young adults.
Yeah. I think a big part of it, too, is keep the stories alive.
Yeah.
We got to tell stories. The fire service is built on storytelling, right? And the stories only get better with time, right? Out 3 windows, now 20 years later, it's out 7 windows, right? Like the stories get better and better, but the characters remain the same. And what I think was really cool is when you get to tell stories and then you do have an event like your, retirement dinner or the fish fry. In my department, we do what we call an old timers dinner, where once a year we bring back all the older guys and we have a beefsteak. In New Jersey, beefsteak's a thing, right? We do a beefsteak. That's my favorite dinner. But what's really fun about that is when we tell stories over the course of the year and then we have that event, now the kids that have been hearing those stories can put the faces to the guys that were in those stories.
Yeah.
That's important. The storytelling is so matter of fact. We have to make it matter of fact. And we have to include people in that storytelling. I know for me, one of my hardest parts of storytelling is being present. My time is so limited in the volunteer firehouse, right? So it's the bumper time is down, the kitchen table time's down. So we're actually hampering these young kids in the volunteer fire service because we don't give them the time that I once got. When I was young, I had guys, they were telling stories all day long. Go to the firehouse on Friday at 3 o'clock. The guys are there, right? Go down on the weekend, go on Monday night's football, Sunday football. Like, there were always guys there. We don't have that anymore.
I think we lost it because a lot of, especially in the New Jersey, New York metropolitan area here, we're getting outpriced to live here.
Oh, 100%.
So you're not getting that blue-collar, quote-unquote, backfill of generations coming in.
Right.
Guys get old, they retire, unfortunately pass away, move on, move to Florida, and then there's no one backfilling, I'll be honest with you.
It's not for everybody.
It's not. And I love people that want to step into that role and help the community, but you have to understand there's a standard. And I think that some places are so hard up for manpower, they'll take anybody. and willing to put the standard aside for that. That's dangerous.
Well, and that brings us right back to the initial conversation, right? We can't sacrifice our position. We can't sacrifice our morals, ethics, values, our standards. I find that the volunteer fire service almost wants to continually lower standards instead of maintaining where we are or aspiring to do more, right? We think the answer is if we lessen our burden, the more we'll get out of it. I actually think it's completely reversed. I think the more opportunity and the better culture you build, the more you'll get out of your people. If you're in it to lower the standards, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure. And that goes back to the whole beginning of this conversation, then, right? The integrity of your company. If you want to be a high-performing company, you are not going to allow your standards to go backwards.
I'm not sure we have the same amount of children, when I say children, 12 to 16, that are in love with the fire service. It's a romantic job. It's romanticized. Like, think about it, right? I think that because of this, and there's a lot of good to this. Mm-hmm. Senior man is in the palm of your hand. A lot of bad to it as well, where they want that instant gratification. They don't want to learn the history. The love of the game, right? The love of the fire service comes from legacy.
Right.
That's really, truly loving the fires. We all love going to fires. There's no way around saying that. We all want to go to fire. We all love going to fires. But the ones that truly love it are the ones that are studying it, leading up to it, that moment when the tones go off. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that truly, truly love the fire service. And looking back, the kids I grew up with coming into this world was everybody loved it. Everybody was reading and studying and talking, waiting for those tones to go off and doing every little intricate detail up to the tones drop, and then boom, it's game time. I don't see that anymore. You have a bunch of magazines sitting right here, right?
Yeah, which was important to me.
Yes, and you probably put them there.
I did.
No one's probably touched them since.
I have.
Yeah, so it's a problem.
I agree with you, 100%.
But you pick up some of these things and you start going through, you start reading its legacy, tradition, honor, pride.
But are we romanticizing the way it used to be versus where we are today? And that's what I'm curious about. I think it is a romantic proposition of the way it used to be versus where we are today, because it's much more intimate to grab this Apparatus Safety and Trends, this Firehouse magazine supplement, and open it up and go, this is cool. You know, this is nice. It's romantic. It's like reading a book versus watching a movie. We've become a movie society today.
Yeah.
We're not a book society anymore. And I go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
And the problem with that is that with the scrolling of social media, you're getting a very, very, very small portion of the story.
And we're social media guys.
Yeah. Very small piece, but very small part of the story.
Yes.
Whether it's tactics, how to cut a roof, or it's legacy and tradition, you're getting a very small part. If you picked up the book and read the book, not the Cliff Notes, you'd understand the game more.
I love that you said Cliff Notes, because most people listening to this right now don't even know what Cliff Notes are. Right?
Yeah.
Yellow and black books, right?
Yeah.
The little insert books that we would buy, and it was a cheat. You still had to read, but it was a cheat code to what a thicker book was
It's
about.
almost the original Instagram.
And I've been it's so funny you say this, because I've been toying with the idea of bringing back the idea of Cliff Notes and talking about it more. Because when we were growing up, we used Cliff Notes for writing papers and taking tests and so on. It was a shortcut to reading the book. I think today we're trying to find the Cliff Notes of the fire service, and that's all people are looking for, are the shortcuts. And you just sometimes have to read the book.
Yeah, a few times. Read the book, take the notes. Read the book again, take the notes, go on a run, make a mistake, come back, reread the book because you made the mistake, write down the mistake, study it. Now you go out the door. Maybe then third, fourth time you read the book, you might get it right. But then it's just one more mistake waiting for you.
There's a lot there.
Instant gratification. Everybody wants to come on this job and be that legendary firefighter, 1 to 2, 3 years. Pete Park just talked about it in the one episode. That was the thing. Nobody's invested. You have to be invested.
It's very hard to teach patience today, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very hard to teach patience because we live in an immediate society. And this job, it's funny because I was saying before, you have all the opportunity in the world to put your stamp on this job and you can control 90% of it. But the 10% you can't control are the fires, right? And your actual experience on the fire ground, and how to manage people in crisis. Your own people, right? Dealing, like the HR side of firefighting, right? As a company boss or a chief, you have to deal with your people, so you never know what's going to come up. Those are your two variables. Everything else, you as the individual can control. You can control your knowledge. You can control the way that your temperament is by showing up early, showing up on time to work, doing your job, pushing a mop, all those things. You can control all of that. And we need that. And that's 90% of the fire service. But that 10% of the HR side of dealing with our people and fires will only come with time. You can't expedite that process.
There's a series of steps, like a sequential order to get to where we have to be. And each step, you have to study it and understand that the next step comes after that. And after that comes the next step. You can control all that, like you said. You can even control as you're driving that rig to the fire. But once you cross the threshold of the fire building,
yes,
all bets are off.
Right.
And by accepting the fact that you can't control that, you gain complete control at that moment. And then you trust everything those standards were set for. It's a problem because the Cliff Notes don't teach you that. They teach you halfway to get there. And then when you get to the threshold, they never really tell you really what to do. It's like, well, I'll try this, I'll try that, it might work. But unfortunately, with social media and a lot that's going on with that, I see another trend coming with a different culture, and it's not a good one. And it's going to jam people up, and it's going to get kids killed. This job is dangerous. You have to take it seriously. And we start to dismiss how serious that is and how dangerous it is. Firemen die.
Why can't we have 1-year firemen? Why can't we have 3-year firemen? Why can't we have 5-year, 7-year, 12, 20, 25, 40? Like, why is everybody so afraid to speed up their process? Nobody wants to be a 3-year fireman. Why not? Like, think about your 3rd year in. How much fun were you having?
Oh, it's great.
Like, I think about that. I've been wrapping my head around this conversation. I introduced it to my program for the last 2 times I gave it now, and I talk about that. I go, this fire service is a process when we talk about the process, right? And I'm like, there's room for everybody. So if you're a 3-year fireman, be a 3-year fireman. You're going to make mistakes. You need to find your way. You're going to mess up. You're going to have highlights. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to have laughter and tears. It's being a 3-year fireman. Why are we so fast to speed up the career, whether volunteer or career firefighting? Why are we in such a hurry to move forward? It's a process, and we have to kind of go all in on that process.
I believe we're not falling in love with that process.
You're good, bro.
Mainly because
You too.
guys aren't getting checked. No one's getting punched in the face anymore. We're not going to as many fires, and you can say it works up or down. I feel work tends to be up, honestly.
Yeah.
But the quality of fires we're getting aren't challenging the guys. And because they're not being challenged, they think they're better than they are. It's a false guided skill set versus speed versus purpose of understanding what the fire ground entails and how dangerous it really is. We speed it up because we've never really been tested. We've never truly been humbled. And this job has a way of humbling us from our 4th fire to our 400th fire, but we need to be humbled. So without being humbled, you go from 3 years to 10 years almost instantly. Now the next generation comes in, they see you acting the way you do. He's good, he doesn't wear his hood, he doesn't wear a chin strap.
That's where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. Boom, now we're there. But there's no real area to prove yourself in between. From the guy who's got 5 years acting like he's got 15, or the guy who's got 1 day acting like he's got 3, no one's being challenged.
Did we do that?
Probably, but I think that the senior men put you in your place very quickly. Or you act pretty cool, and then you go to a fire that night, and you realize, I'm not that cool.
Right.
And you're lucky you don't get killed in those moments. It's not being taken serious. This job can fucking kill you, and it's not being taken serious. We're on this anti-safety culture, and that's like the new spin on things. It's great. Cool, I get it. But this job's dangerous, and the way we can operate safely is not by a clean cab initiative or wearing a vest on the highway. It's understanding how serious this game is and being that good at it where you can manipulate problems because you've already made them.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to get in trouble.
There's a lot there, but that, in order to do that, you have to be dialed into a level that allows you to have that happen. And it was kind of a convoluted roundabout. My brain is spinning about what you said because I think there's a lot of value there. We try to do whatever we can. This is a dangerous job. It will always be a dangerous job. Everything we do, right? No doubt. But I think we can mitigate as much hazard as we can by being proficient and good at what we do. I think that that's important, but that comes with time and experience. That is what we have to look at. Like, I'm thinking about, I asked you that question. I go, were we like that? I'm thinking I was like that, but I don't think it's to a level of which it is today. You know, I think and it could have just been more cockiness and bravado than thinking I was God's gift. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that we probably had officers that were Vietnam vets, tunnel rats, infantry, real fucking men.
Different cut.
That would put you in your place without thinking twice. But on top of that, they had a lot of life experience coming into the fire service and then went through a lot of fires. So that when you went to a fire, you followed everything he did and you learned. And when he would let you make your mistakes to a certain point and let you learn, but he'd never let anything happen to you. We don't have officers like anymore because we're so quick to study and promote and go, which is great. I'm never saying turn down a promotion. But the caliber of firefighters we have now that are young, they're coming on the job from Ivy League schools with master's degrees. The fire department tested them as a joke. For me, it was very hard to study to get to a certain point. For them, they could do it with their eyes closed, which is great. I wish I had that ability. However, when you get into the role of being an officer, how many mistakes have you made to protect the young kid coming on, and how far can you push him and let him make a mistake? It's the same thing as when you have a kid, right? And you're watching your kid learn to walk. You let him fall.
Have to.
That's how you learn. But if you pad the floor around and he never learns to truly walk, he's never going to be proficient at walking. It's that basic.
I love this. I was at a trunk or treat town thing yesterday, and I just love watching parents parent. And you watch today compared to how I was raised. It is a very different landscape of parenting today than it was when you and we didn't even have trunk or treat. We'll start with that, right? We didn't have an organized place to trick or treat in a closed off parking lot. We ran the streets, right? Like, so even just the event is another way to protect, to insulate, right?
And to bounce off that, think about this. Halloween, you go to knock on the door. It takes a little bit of courage to knock on a stranger's
100%.
door, even though you're getting a reward. So when you come knock on the firehouse door, in the volunteer world for an application, or in the career world where you bring your cakes for your first tour, you don't have that life skill because of the trunk or treat. And that's just a basic analogy, but that's how deep that goes. When I say, I probably shouldn't have said it's the parents. It's more of a generational thing.
It is.
Of parenting, not the parents. So,
but I also think it's not one size fits all. There are some really amazing young kids in the fire service right now. But I just want to point that out because I've seen some absolute rock stars. And I'm like, man, why are you different?
And they stand out.
Yeah.
They
like
really do.
Stand out.
You know right away.
Yes. Yeah. I still think a lot of it comes down to the individual. Parenting's one thing, generational values is another. I think it also comes down to the individual. And I think it's important. I was thinking before when I was talking about like the volunteer firehouse and not having enough bumper time to talk with these young kids these days. And I was thinking about a couple things while I was saying it. And the one thing we were talking about this, I don't even know if this is part of it for sure. I think the other part of it too is like when I grew up, like you only played recreation sports. There were no travel teams, A, B, C, year-round sports, right? All those things. So kids get so wrapped up. I know guys that their kids play baseball year-round, right? They went in at 9 years old on one sport, right? So now they're not playing different sports every season, which is just the recreation. And then when you get to high school, middle school, if you're good enough to make those teams, you play for the high school, middle school. Now you have 11-year-old kids that are they play baseball year-round. They go to pitching training, hitting training, weight training at 12 years old, right? They go all in on a sport. The parents then have to go all in on it too. And typically stuff like that, it's the dad. So there's another reason why we're pulling people away from the volunteer fire service, right? It's like the way the world has evolved, it has evolved in a way that it is taking up more time today than ever before. What are we talking about? Hey, man, what's going on? How you been? Busy. You don't tell me you don't have any money. You don't tell me, right? Like, people go, hey, Jay, how are you? I should be like, broke. I wish I had more money. I wish we went on vacation more. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we don't talk about that. We talk about, what's up? And I'm busy, going like crazy, running 1,000 miles an hour. There's a reason why we don't have what we have anymore. We brought it upon ourselves in some ways. It's just become a much more convoluted system. But the one thing that doesn't really change is the fire service. Like, fires change, our types of responses change, our responsibilities change, but the inherent mission, protect life and property, has not changed. Everything else has. That's a disconnect.
Yeah, and I think the first time I really saw how much it did change is when we spoke briefly about work-life balance. And I'm not going down that road, but I'm just saying, though, I was taken back by the response on that. I was like, wow, the fire service is a lot different than I thought it was, or maybe how it was when I was much younger, and me even 15 years ago. It was all in 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe a lot of it does come down to the travel sports programs.
I don't know.
Tremendous stress on the parents and the kids.
Right?
Listen, my kids play rec, they love it. My son was asked to go to the travel soccer, and they start looking at the schedule. I told him, buddy, here's the deal, man.
You're all in.
Like, yeah. And you know what he said? I'd rather spend more time with you or spend more time with my friends fishing or doing whatever. So yesterday at work, everyone's talking about their kids and travel, this and that, hockey, this, basketball, soccer. Everything's going right now. All the sports are starting up. I call my son. He's hiking to a little fishing hole. He played soccer on Saturday. Sunday, he went for a little hike, and he was fishing with his friends, and I'm like, you know what? I love that. Yeah, it would be cool if he was playing all these great sports and he was the next Jeter. But in reality, that's being a child. That's learning to make mistakes on the fly, all the things I don't ever want to know about that he makes, but it's going to make him a better man. I truly believe that if your father can allow you to become a man, any good officer can make you a fireman. But it starts with the generation of your father making you a man. We've lost that.
It's awesome. I couldn't agree with you more. It was very well said. To be able to, I think a lot of it too, people get wrapped up in their children's accomplishments. And I don't know how many dads would sit there and really give a real accurate picture to their son about what the commitment will look like and ask them what they truly wanted over them saying, what a great opportunity. Can't wait for you to do this. Let's go. And not giving the kid an out. Like, there's so much to that. Because guess what? The fact of the matter is your kid's not going to be Jeter. Yeah. I don't say that to you. I'm saying in general.
No, yeah.
It's like 99.9% of these kids are not going to go on to make a career living out of being a professional athlete. But why are we pushing them so hard? I mean, you can still learn the values. We talked about it. We want athletes in our fire departments. Those are the people we want. But we also need people that can be independent, will go for a hike and go fishing and know how to string up his own lures and eventually make his own flies and take a week in the woods by himself. You want to talk about,
well, I mean,
it's important.
Sports are very important. Mm-hmm. I'm a big supporter of any sporting event. But you don't have to play at the highest level to understand where to fit in.
That's right.
It's all about the core values of learning the sport, not becoming the best at it. It's the core values in it.
Right.
That'll make you a great firefighter, learning core values of understanding where to fit in any sport you do, from basketball to soccer. Like I talk about the firefighter IQ, sports IQ, understanding where to fit in, the X's and O's. It all comes from that. I'm not saying don't play sports, but I'm saying if you have an opportunity to do a little bit of both, be more well-rounded when you're ready to hit the real world.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's. I'm grateful that my kids are not wrapped up in all these different programs every single day after school and so on. I love having dinner with them, and I love seeing them when I can, and all that. It's so important to me. Believe it or not, we had a moment last week. It was kind of caught me off guard, but we were sitting around the dinner table. Now that school's back in, we have dinner 3-4 nights a week at the house if we can, together, sitting at the table, cooked meal. And I know it's not possible for every family, but that's important for me because that's my time to connect with them if I can, if I'm home and not traveling, whatever. We're sitting at a table, and Paige said to me last week, she goes, Dad, I'm grateful for how you raised us. You and Mom, how you guys raised us. She's like, I see it now.
Wow.
17 years old, my daughter. And then my 16-year-old jumps in and goes, oh, yeah. She's like, Dad, she's like, you guys, like, we're so different than all of our friends and the kids in school and stuff. And it was a moment where I was like, can you say that again, please? Because that's probably the nicest compliment I've ever gotten. And I looked at Terry, and it was a moment for us. But parenting matters, and your time with your children matter. And it's what you I don't give them everything. I can't give them everything. And I am their friend, their confidant, their punisher, their everything, right? That's who I'm supposed to be. But man, do I have a relationship with my kids that is just like, and for a 16 and 17-year-old girl who lives in this world of TikTok and Snapchat, turn around and look at their dad and mom and say, like, we appreciate how you raised us, bro, moment, right? So, like, I look at it this way, it can be parlayed to the firehouse too, and it takes work. It takes work. We need to put in more work. That's how this all works out. Right? We want to protect the integrity of this job, to get back to the original conversation about protecting the legacy of our fire companies and our department. You're on an ACE company, right? If you're in an A house, you can't let that go to a B house. You can't let it turn into a C house. You got to remain an A house. So you got to go all in on the integrity of that job.
It's funny what you just said, and I see it in my job, is that firehouses that have really good reputations, they'll come up in conversation, like, it's a past rep shop. Meaning, like, at one time they were good, but they let the standard fall. And it's across the job, not just my job, probably nationwide, every job.
It's nationwide.
It's obvious when those standards fall. And it comes from the senior men and the officers allowing those standards to slip a little bit each time, each run,
That's what
each
it
year.
is.
And next thing you know, you're a past rep shop.
Because when you lose track of where you came from, and you don't value the hard work of those that came before you to get the reputation to where it is, you don't value that enough, guess what? Your standards are going to start to suffer. You're not being protective of it anymore. When you don't protect your legacy department and new people come in, things will change, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we need to be protective of that. And that's the problem, is everybody comes in with their own agenda and their own ideas. But that's great. Welcome. You're welcome here. But this is how we do business.
Yeah.
Somebody has to maintain that.
And I'm willing to change, but the backbone of the legacy of the tradition of the brothers that came long, long before you still stands.
Has to.
So if you want to change anything, take the time to learn that.
Oh, so good.
Respect that.
Yeah.
Thank the senior men
Yeah.
for what they've done. Thank them for saying, you know what, this is the firehouse I want to be a part of because of guys like you. Because the reputation you built, the fires that you put out, the standards you created. Now to come in and undermine it with standards that maybe you find from a different department because you transfer into a place, it's not going to fly, man.
If you don't, I'm sorry.
No, but every firehouse just has a little different bit of a personality. Same job, even in the volunteer world, each little company's throughout the town, there's a different personality, and you kind of gravitate to the people that you know, where you fit in. This place, young crew, you're probably drilling a lot, talking a lot. I don't know the dynamics here really, but maybe the other firehouse is more the senior guys, and they'll come down and they'll do coffee in the morning and hang out, and that's that dynamic. When I grew up in the volunteer fire department, that's how that was. We had one firehouse, it was all like the hardcore like senior guys, like my dad's generation. They're all there. They're all Newark firemen, Irvington firemen, all these guys, and that was like where they go hang out. If you wanted to learn something, Sunday morning you got your ass up out of bed.
That was the place.
Hungover or not. Maybe still drunk sometimes. You roll into the firehouse, and they're down there. There's coffee, there's donuts, and they're telling stories. They're telling legacy. They're laughing, joking. And you're just sitting there being a fly on the wall. The other firehouses, in particular the other firehouse I'm thinking of, Saturday night, guys down there playing cards. Want to be part of that atmosphere? You could go there and hang out on Saturday night. But those guys aren't really mixing with these guys, so it's a different personality. I found it important to have my tradition with this place, the place where I started. But I always navigated the other places because I always wanted to learn something a little bit different.
Sure.
It's understanding the fires that you're going to with different people is very important. People are different. Firemen are different. You have to get to know them personally to understand how they're going to operate a fire.
I also think, too, that you need to respect the institution. And so you might have ideas or you want to innovate in a different way, but until you become understanding of the foundation of where you are now, don't make changes. You gotta go all in. You gotta buy into where you are. You want to be a member here? Welcome. This is how we've always done it here. This is how we do it. I'm not saying that we can't ever change, but learn that person. I love the personality thing. I think it's super important. Learn the personalities and then become part of it. And you can institute some change or navigate in a different direction. You can do that. It's a process.
You don't have to clone those guys.
Right.
Just respect those
That's
guys.
right.
And the next argument is, well, I haven't seen that guy at a call, at a fire, in 3 years. Who is he to say anything about anything around here? You know how many hallways those guys crawled down long before you were down there? You were probably still in elementary school when they were crawling down those hallways. So it's like, come on, man. Like, they put their time in. They still come down, they have their coffee, they want to hang out with the guys, fix it up, go to the dinners, the social events, the fish fries. Like, it's still part of the family. Mm-hmm. I don't know. People just don't get it, maybe. Maybe they do get it, just don't care. But
Well, I think that's a part of it. I think what they lose track of, out of sight, out of mind, what we were talking about before. And that I talk about it on my program, and I go, those young kids that are in the firehouses now, and they're here and they're working, and they're the guy that comes down and opens up the door for the ice guy, the SCBA guy, the pack checks, the oil changes.
Yep.
He's the guy we always call to go down to the firehouse because he's around. He'll help us out. Or Monday nights, he's always there early, stays late. Or Saturdays, he's there painting tools, whatever it is. I go, I appreciate you being part of our process and part of our company or department, but that doesn't entitle you to anything more because you're working harder than others. You're just part of the process. You're doing that for your own work ethic, your own wants, needs, and desires. That's who you are as a person, and I am grateful for you painting tools on a Saturday morning here. Thank you. It's awesome. It doesn't entitle you to anything more. I think we get wrapped up in what we're entitled to because of how much output we have. Because I'll say to him, that's great. 30 years ago, I spent more time than you did here. I put my time in 30 years ago when I was your age. I just can't do it anymore. You're going to hold me to the same standard today? It doesn't work that way. I ran circles around you 30 years ago. My guys, how young we were here, we lived in this place 7 days a week. Like you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like out of sight, out of mind. If I'm not here anymore, or some of the other guys that put in all that time years ago aren't here anymore, those newer kids that are doing it now think they're entitled to more because they're working harder. They're doing more than most. It doesn't work that way. You're part of the system, right? It's not about you. You're painting the tools because you have company pride. You're painting the tools because we want our stuff squared away for the next fire. You're willing to step up and do that. Thank you. It doesn't mean that you're any better than anyone else.
And to be honest, in the volunteer world, it's the same 4 or 5 guys put the fire out.
100%.
Regardless who's painting the tools and who's letting the guy in for the oil change, it's the same 4 guys that put the fire out. So, give or take, understand that if you really want to be a part of it, understand where you fit in.
That's right.
But when you go out the door, ultimately, you have a job to do. The job can kill you. Take it seriously. Mm-hmm. But behind the doors, the public doesn't really know what goes on. That's important. We maintain that.
Agreed.
And we're losing that as well because of this. We're letting too much of the outside on the inside because of TikTok and all these stupid things you see on there. Never let anything go past for us, the house watch, for you, the apparatus floor. Never let anyone go upstairs, even if they're your good friend. No, sorry. You don't go upstairs. You don't go past house watch unless you're invited.
Right.
It's important we maintain that because we're letting too much of our secrets out to the public. And that's where we get hurt because our secrets are important. That's our legacy.
That's what makes it special.
Yeah.
If everybody knows what we do every single second of the day, it's not special anymore.
Right.
You want to be a member of this company? Come learn what we do. Be a part of us and you keep it here. It's magical. If we show everybody the Wizard of Oz, we pull the curtain back and now you know who the wizard is, nothing means anything anymore. You want to be a member of my company? Come here. Be a member. Be a part of it. Go all in on us. We'll go all in on you. But if you want to take this and go somewhere else with it, or you want to share what we do here with everybody else and pull the curtain back, This is special for us. Be proud of where you come from. Be proud
Stop
of where you
making
are.
TikTok videos, please.
Stop it.
It's ridiculous. It's an embarrassment of the fire service. So if you're watching this and you do that, I'm a loss for words on that one. And we don't see it that much anymore. But during COVID, that was a big thing. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to be protective. I'm protective of what I do. You're protective of what you do. You know, if you look at the consistency in our messages, they're consistent. You know, we don't try to reach. We don't follow social trends. It's none of that. It's trying to do our part, creating authentic content that represents who we are and the job that we love, and that's all it is, right? It's us sitting here today doing this. Like, yeah, we bounced all over the place. We hit on a ton of different things. We might publish it, we might not, you know? But you have to be protective in your message and what you're doing. And I don't think the fire service is something that should be taken for granted. And I think it's taken for granted every single day by...
Including the communities, the politicians, and everyone else outside those doors are taking us for granted on the inside of the doors. And it's trickling down all the way down to the membership of any job.